Great. Alright, so welcome to another happiness class. Let me just give you a basic few intro thingies. Supposedly we're supposed to start 2 p.m. every day, but I'm always a bit late. Do check out bigquestionsanswer.com for all the previous classes. This is lesson 1, but that's only because I keep rotating. I did lesson 34 last week. And all the things I say are really simple, based on psychology, science, logic, and inspired by Islam. And I do it because I just love people, and I see people are miserable and they shouldn't be miserable, because it's actually quite easy to be happy, and I want to fix that. You don't have to be a Muslim to follow this stuff. And yeah, I'm just going to get going. So, I didn't even bring out my notes, but basically, why do we need direction? That's kind of lesson 1 is about direction, and I'll talk about why I've worded the question that we're just. Am I still in shot? I'll come on this side, make it easy for you. Yeah. I've got a nice guy called Carl, if you don't mind me saying your name, and he's helping me out as cameraman, making sure I'm in shot. But anyway, yeah, so if we're going to go on a journey where I'm going to take you on this course, it makes sense to talk about direction. But the other reason why it's important to talk about direction is because people really do feel lost at the moment. And that's very apparent by all the depression. So if you look in the West, in the rich countries in the West, you see depression is increasing. So that tells you that stuff isn't enough, right? We have to change our approach and our way of thinking. You know, stuff by itself is not bad. Maybe you could help loads of people by having stuff, right? It's not a bad thing. But if you think stuff by itself is going to make you happy, that's why people become miserable, because they're all alone with their stuff. So that's kind of why I'm talking about direction. And then what do I mean by direction? I'm going to break that down a little bit, because it comes into this question. I thought, I don't want to say, okay, the direction is go that way or that way. I want a direction that makes you happy. But not only that, I believe happiness is quite an easy thing to do, right? If you just let go of your ego a little bit, right? Because I've got massive ego, everybody's got a bit of an ego, and it stops them from learning. I don't know, I just like to interact a little bit. Have you ever heard of this great book called The Ego is the Enemy? Ever heard of that? Okay, cool. So, yeah, I love, like, Ryan Holloway, I forgot his name. Ego is the Enemy. Do YouTube it. I do reference a lot of things on my website. So all my videos in the description, I put a lot of videos, right? And that's just and they're not all from Islam. Actually, most of them are not from Islam. They're just from psychologists. From, you know, they're not particularly involved. They don't have an axe to grind or anything. They're just like trying to make the world a better place, right? And so, a lot of these ideas are not in agreement with Islam, because Islam is all about, if you let go of your ego, you'll be closer to God and you start finding the answers. That's literally one of the meanings of Islam. But anyway, to let go of your ego, to submit your will, is the way it's described. Anyway, so let's quickly talk about what I think should be the easy way to happiness. So I'm just going to talk about 3 things very briefly, and I'm going to go into more depth when I go through the course. One is, every day you should be passionate about something. But how do you find passionate? Very simply, through purpose. I don't know if that makes any sense. Does that mean anything to you? Can you be... Do you agree?
Yeah, I agree.
Cool, right? And that's not just a thought of my own. Again, I like probably the greatest psychologist on the topic of happiness is Viktor Frankl. Ever heard of that name? Yeah, he's written a book called Man's Search for Meaning. Jewish, not particularly practicing Jewish, whatever, but whatever. Anyway, he's famous psychologist and on the kind of levels of Freud and things like that. So it's not just being religious, right? And meaning is essential to happiness. And meaning and purpose are roughly the same things. And so, passion is just another word for feeling excited every day, and through some mechanism, by doing something. That's all it means, really. So that's just a touch on that. And why is that so important? Well, if you want to be happy every day, you need to be passionate about something. You need a direction. Okay. Number 2, for what is it that you know, the direction for happiness? What should it look like? You should not just have what you're aiming for, but it should be like an answer. It should have answer to loads of questions, practical problems, right? So, what is it? Definition of success. One of the reasons why people are so anxious is that their definition of success in the West is to be better than somebody else. Like, how do you get people want to be like, if you thought about somebody who's successful, you might think Elon Musk, and you go, right, why is he successful? Oh, because he's the richest, the greatest, right? Okay, that's a really hard way to be happy, right? Imagine if you wanted to find happiness, you want it the easy way or the hard way. Okay, so if your idea of happiness or success is if you're going to be the best in the world, you're going to probably be miserable the rest of your life because you're probably not going to make it, right? It's just logical, right? But in Islam, to be successful, all you have to do is be a good person, right? And that's really easy. You can do that every day. Be a good person every day, right? And you definitely don't want to be the best because have you ever heard of the phrase Allahu Akbar?
I've heard about it, yeah.
Do you want to guess what that means?
Praise be to God, or God is great, or...
Yeah, perfect, right. So Muslims have to say that all the time. You might hear it in the news in a sort of terrorist kind of situation, but actually Muslims say that that's the most repeated phrase in the Muslim prayer. Okay, between every part of the prayer. Anyway, the point is that when you realize you don't have to be the greatest, then that's a whole load off your back and you're relaxed. Right? If you think you have to be important, and most people feel like they have to be really important, you make it really difficult because nobody's really that important, right? But the more you have to pretend, the harder your life is. So anyway, that's just one practical thing. And another thing is that if there's going to be a bunch of rules, then it's probably better if the bunch of rules are made by your designer, by a god, your god, our god, all of our, a lot of people get confused about, the god of Islam, the god of Christianity, god of Jews, and god of, Buddhism, all that kind of stuff. By the way, Buddhists believe in God, but that's if you know the original teachings. The point is that, first of all, God must exist. I talk about that, like, scientifically later on in the discussion, but the point is that it's better to have rules made by God who knows us best, our design, than by somebody else, right? By somebody who's just guessing, right? Like, he knows, like, you want rules that go deep with your psychology. Does that make any sense? Do you think? Yeah, cool. And just say again.
I think you're trying to say you want rules that are built on human nature.
Perfect. That's really well said. Right. Yeah, I totally agree. And one tip that are based on human nature that I hear from God's teaching, but you don't really hear from scientists, is the remembrance of God. So in Islam, the verse of the Quran says, hearts can find comfort in the remembrance of God. Okay, that is actually reflected in science because scientists tell you that if you just are in nature, and I see nature as a reflection of God, then you find peace. It's the most powerful antidepressant, right? So there is some evidence for that. Hello, an old friend. Yeah. Yeah, you can come a bit closer. I can catch your voice every now and then. I might ask you one question. Just okay. That's cool. Okay. Yeah, it's not cool. Okay. All right. There you go. Okay. I'm gonna try to whiz through this because I did say 15 minutes. Okay. Is there a path for everyone? Okay, because a lot of people say we're all different. How can there be one way to happiness for everybody, right? Okay, psychology is based on the idea that basically there is a thing called human nature, right? And we're not all completely different. We have like these minor differences, but all of us, for example, need to be social. That's a basic thing. And do you know what the biggest killer? I'm just going to ask just to get a bit of involvement. You don't mind your voice coming in, right? Your face has been on one of my shows, so twice or three times. Anyway. Yeah, just your voice. What is the number one killer in London? Do you know? Of people.
Not a particular age group.
No particular age group.
It's going to be something like loneliness or depression.
100% loneliness, right? So, like, that kind of tells you something about human nature, that we all basically need to be connected with people.
How does loneliness kill?
Because you feel like... It's interesting. It kills through stress. So when you feel like you're alone and you've got nobody to help you, no backup, for example. We're all pretty weak. Let's say we're pretty weak, right?
I mean, in the coroner's reports, they don't say cause of death loneliness. That's what
That's
I'm trying to
100.
say.
Yeah, that's a really good point. It's
It needs to be a bit specific. On
yeah.
like,
There's a lot of site.
this up or or.
No, you can Google it. You can Google it. Yeah, you can Google it.
Yeah, but that's not. You know, we need to have something on the tips of our tongue to explain. You know that loneliness isn't written on the coroner's report.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. So
old people are dying of like lack of self-care and lack of will to.
and it's not just old people, because when you're by yourself, then you're more stressed and things like that. You don't feel like you're loved. And so I do talk about this thing about there's two kinds of needs. There's the visible needs and the invisible needs, right? And the invisible needs are related to this kind of loneliness, love. Would you agree that human beings need love?
Yes, but I'm just we're moving on. But I just put a question mark on whether loneliness is the biggest killer as such. But
Sure.
yes, human beings need love for sure.
Can you see that love and loneliness kind of opposite ends?
Yes. you can see.
Okay.
You don't move.
Oh yeah. Okay, cool. You could do that. Okay.
Yeah.
But you have to keep it on me as well.
Yeah,
It's
yeah.
gonna
When
be-
you start talking, I bring it to you. Okay,
Okay.
because you talk.
Yes, I can see there are opposite ends.
Cool. Thank you. Well, Mohammed, right? Thank you. Appreciate it. Okay. So yeah, there's common things in psychology, and those are the kind of things I'll be talking about that we all need and make us happy. We're not completely different. Yeah, there are our basic needs that are very similar in lots of people, including things like meaning. Okay, and oneness with each other makes us happier, right? Okay. Yeah. And then people go, especially in materialistic society, people look at the sort of outer results, okay, like jobs. They say, oh, but we've all got different abilities. How can we all have the same solution? And the simple answer is the same positive values always have positive results depending on your skills. So if you've got one skill, let's say you're a basketball player, but you've got a positive attitude, right? You're very giving, you've got a higher goal rather than just to score goals, you know what I mean, right? Then you'll be more successful, that kind of thing. And when I say more successful in the wider sense of not, like, you could be actually be depressed, like, who's that most famous swimmer who won the most gold medals? Do you remember his name? Yeah, but he was really depressed, right? Because just winning gold medals isn't enough to make you happy. You need something more meaningful than that, right? So, yeah. And then finally, stop chasing stuff only God fulfills, okay, is a kind of a really important idea. So what do I mean by that? So if you look at what psychologists are saying, even Viktor Frankl, you'll find that there are many things that you can choose, that you can go, okay, I want money, I want this, and I want that. But even Viktor Frankl, he described God as a supreme meaning. He said, like, think of the highest meaning, the thing that doesn't change, right? That is, you could define as God, that one thing that doesn't change and it doesn't depend on your circumstances. If you have things that, if you depend on something for your happiness, and those things could change any moment, like if you depend on a human being, which a lot of people do, like, oh, I fell in love with somebody and the relationship went down, and then that's the end of your happiness. You don't want something like that to depend on. Okay, and right, so yeah, kind of missing a few things, but I want to just say one or two things that are really important to me, right? So I recommend, if you take away anything, be generous. You'll find that it helps you in lots of ways, including your career, right? So if you want to be really good at or useful in your job or make a business, then you need to be able to bring value to people. And you only do that by practicing generosity, by helping people. And then you also feel good about yourself, because people who are not generous, I don't know what you feel about this, right? People who are not generous, they start living in a smaller and smaller hole that say, oh no, I don't have enough stuff and I can't help it. People, the more you give, the more you realize, the more you have, sort of thing, right? So cool, I'm getting a lot of nods there, like that. What was your name again? I forgot.
Martin.
Martin. And thank you for that. Appreciate it, Mohammed. Okay, and let's just try to finish this off. So, how do you find the happiness part, right? One thing, just follow the facts. As long as you follow the facts, I think you'll be safe, right? You don't need fiction. So I believe in Islam, and I think Islam follows the facts. We can debate on that, agree with that, whatever. I'm not here to win debates, right? But I think there's a lot of facts behind what I teach, okay? And even if you don't even follow Islam and you just take things from it, that will make my day. Like generosity. You could say that's an atheist thing. You could say that's an anything thing, right? Okay.
Islam is say respect everyone. Everyone. No,
Yeah, respect everybody. That's true. Right. I like that. Yeah. Okay. So, for example, so a lot of people say, I'm almost at the end of it. A lot of people say, for example, you have to believe in myths to believe in religion, right? Or to believe in God at least, right? But then my argument, for example, is all the scientists in the world cannot make a fly, right? So to believe that it could have come about by some sort of accident is a really massive belief. Okay, it's like saying, I don't know, this whiteboard. You didn't see the person who made the whiteboard, but we know somebody made it. It's just that the universe, these leaves, they look ordinary, right? But they're solar panels, and they're the best solar panels in the world, right? They recycle, yeah. So things like that. Okay, cool. He's fishing for comments, But no, you're seeing the nods and you're thinking they're going to say something, right? Okay, so basically, to believe in God is not like believing in fairy tales. It's very scientific, and I do spend a whole class talking about that in detail. Okay, and also Islam is very scientific. So, for example, Islam is the only book that talks about the Big Bang very explicitly. It said the whole universe was in a closed-up mass and expanded.
The Big Bang theory was founded by a Catholic priest. So I'm just saying there's about irony there that the Big Bang theory itself was founded by a priest of the Catholic Church.
That's cool. So that's great. I'm glad that, I don't mind because it doesn't really disprove anything, but it's great also because it's good. Because in the Bible, it said the universe was created literally in 6 days, and there was this, like 6 24-hour days. Like
no, the days, even in Jewish readings of the book, days mean other things than days.
Sure.
I mean, there's the whole idea of 1 day is 1,000 years and 1,000 years is a day, which is one rabbinical take. But there's many rabbinical takes on all those pieces. So I wouldn't say it's a literal at all.
Sure. No, thank you very much. Okay, so the word in the original Hebrew is yom, which means it's the same in Arabic, because he knows, right? It means that it can mean a day or it can mean a period. And in the Quran it uses the word yom, okay, which is great, okay? I agree with you in that respect. But the problem is that the way it's described in, what's it called? Genesis? What's the first chapter?
First chapter of Genesis.
The first book in the Bible.
Right, exactly, right?
Yeah, it's the first book.
So it talks about there being the sun rising and the sunrise coming down, right? It doesn't make sense. That would be it describes like a 24-hour day. That's the problem.
No, because there's many rabbinical theories on this as well. Like they were aware of what was going on. There's essentially, I think there's two lights. There's the lights of the heavens, but then there's a supernatural light, and this is what they talk from at the beginning. So again, there's a lot of writing on that, but there's no hypocrisy. It's all elucidated on.
Cool. All right. So I'm just saying, because of the description, it looks like it was 24-hour days. Do you know what I mean? Because it was like there was sunrise and sunset.
Yeah, not that I'm sticking up for the Bible, but wouldn't it be only 24 hours once the Earth was created?
That's right. That's why I disagree with the idea of 6 24-hour days to make the universe. So it looks like we all disagree with it, and maybe what you're saying is that maybe it requires some sort of interpretation.
Yeah, I think that's tautology. Yeah, I think the Bible definitely requires interpretation. I mean, it needs an interpreter for sure.
So, yeah, just to wind up, what else is there to say? There's a lot of misconceptions. I think it's really important to clear the misconceptions. I should go back down, shouldn't I? Thank you very much, Mohammed. What some of the misconceptions is, for example, or people don't realize, Islam, I would say, is the most feminist religion, right? So if you look at the people converting in the West, most of them are women. Okay, and they've got good reasons to. So, for example, a lot of people say things like, oh, in Islam, women only inherit half as men, which is true, but until you read the rest of it, understand the rest of the story, it makes it actually a very...
I think I think if we were talking about historically and the achievements of like civilization, like if you're comparing an Islam which was it 600 years younger than Christianity and thousands of years younger than Judaism, and you're comparing that to a West which is essentially in decadent and dying, and everything looks better than what you see in the West, to be honest. But if you could sort of compare that to other high cultural marks in history, then I think you could really argue whether the high point of Islam produces more feminine happiness rather than the high points of other civilizations. I think you could argue that. But yeah, if you're comparing it to the West, then everything wins.
Cool. I love your different ideas. So I'm just going to point out why I said. Yeah, we agree with you. As Muslims, we agree with you in lots of ways. I don't really particularly need to disagree, right? Okay.
Can you answer? Could you maybe give some of your own feeling around that question of whether the high point of Islam compares to the high points of other civilizations on regards to the wellness of women? Could you give what do you feel around that?
So I think all of the religious teachings throughout humanity were great for men and women. For example, if you look at Judaism, it's very role-based religion. Like women should be like women, men should be like men, and all this kind of stuff. And I think it helps people to be specialists, right? I see it from a sort of a capitalistic mindset. Like if you specialize in labor, you just become really good at what you do. That's all it is, right? And then how do you choose who specializes in what? According to your specific ability in biology, right? But just one or 2 points I wanted to make, because I wanted to clarify some misgivings about Islam. For example, one was, first of all, most people who are converts to Islam in the West are women, and there must be a reason why, right? Okay, and some of the reason...
Because,
Because they want more of us from other people.
No, go ahead. Finish the point. No, finish the point.
I'll finish my point. Okay, no, but I appreciate it. You got a good idea, right? Okay, very quickly. So, for example, I was talking about how women get half of the inheritance men do, right? Okay, there's two really interesting stories about that. So, first of all, a man has to. So, let's say I've got a sister, and I've got brother and sister, right? So, sorry. I've got a sister, and I get some money, and she gets half of what I get. She gets to spend it on anything she wants, and I have to spend it on her and my mum and everybody, because I'm responsible for the household. So, for me, I would even say it. Some people might argue, and there's a Muslim here. Some people might argue that's really unfair for men. How comes women? Unless you're not the only example. If a woman earns money, okay, she doesn't have to spend a penny on the family, and the man has to. So that seems really unfair on men, if anything. Any points?
That rule is basically is irrelevant, because most men will spend money on their family. So it doesn't mean a lot.
Yeah, exactly. I agree, because in a family setting with a marriage, you've got a common project together.
Yeah.
It's not like it's not like you have two selfish people, two separate projects. So in a sense, the gentleman's point that's irrelevant could quite stand, you know.
It's kind of it comes across like it's like an afterthought. So you say they only inherit half, and then say, oh, but you get to keep it. But in practice, you don't keep it because you spend it on your family. It's like it doesn't mean anything.
Exactly. I could see the gentleman's point. Yeah.
So I agree in many ways, right? So, for example, I would say in a healthy family setting, the wife will say, I'm going to do something that helps everybody, right? But she's not forced to. So, for my...
But as well, Islam why he say have to the men look after the family, because the woman not strong enough to look after the family. Why?
Lots of women are strong.
No, but they're not strong like men. That's familiar what they say. Not strong enough. Not strong enough. But
interesting. There's a different vision of women, which I think I was talking about on the high mark of different civilizations. Like in England, for example, there was a queen. There was a queen of England, and she governed the whole country in a sense from her, you know, and she was a woman.
but
So she
someone working for her, not herself.
No, the actual rule, why she rules goes back to the idea that she used to be the sole sovereign. Queen Elizabeth I ruled this country, and so if a woman can rule a country, then I'm pretty sure this is, I think, Jewish Christian vision of women is different to the Islamic vision, because I think in the Jewish Christian vision, when the husband dies, then the woman becomes a matriarch of the family. Where in Islam, I think when the husband dies, the oldest son becomes the patriarch. Is that true? Is there a difference?
Yeah, that makes sense. So, just to wind it up a little bit, right? So, okay, so I do look at the biological differences of men, okay, including the psychological differences, okay. And when you're a leader, you can't be pushed around by different opinions too much. You have to go for what's right, even if it's uncomfortable, okay. And psychologically, it's known that women are a lot more agreeable, okay. Men, yeah, and they're also. Yeah, so basically they're better leaders. People don't have to agree, but that's what I say, right? Men are better leaders in a family setting, right? But the other point I want to make is not just I don't like the idea of people saying it's an afterthought in terms of Islam bringing so many nice, caring things about religion to just an afterthought. I don't think so, because it's going completely against the norms of that time. But not only that, if you think about it historically, the right to inheritance property for women came 1,500, 400 years ago, and it only came 100 years ago in this country, right? That's a massive thing. We should kind of, if we're being honest, and as I said, looking for the truth and just following the facts, we should at least say, you know what, that's a pretty cool thing to be 1,400 years ahead of England.
I'm not sure if the right to inherit property from a woman by a woman came into this country 100 years ago, because of its intrinsic centrality in Judaism and Christianity. I find it hard to understand that there would be a law 100 years ago that would bring that in, where we have the Queen Elizabeth I inheriting the whole country from her dad, Henry VIII. So if she inherited the whole country, then I can't see how...
Shall I give a quick answer to that?
Yeah.
Easy. Yeah. It's a nice, controversial, fun one, right? Okay. Okay, I really appreciate it. Okay, thank you, I appreciate it. Okay, so first of all, Google it. If you don't like Google, I mean, Google, you'll find some good results, yeah? You can do your own research and you can tell me later. And you got my number, by the way, right? You can tell me, right? Yeah. No, but, you can, post on the video, right? You can say, I Googled it and it's false, right? Feel free.
The points.
Yeah, so all the comments. So, yeah. The funny thing is, okay. So, do you know that King Charles doesn't follow in the regular inheritance rules? I think there's a big fuss about that recently. When he became king, okay, he didn't have to pay all sorts of inheritance tax, okay, right? So these people, like the king and queen, they don't follow the normal rules. They don't follow the law. So they're above the law. Okay. How do you feel about that? Any opinions?
Well, that's just civic tax laws versus the sovereign's, what do they call it? Privilege, isn't it? It's,
yeah, sure. So they're above the law.
How can the sovereign be taxed by her own...
Her Majesty's revenue.
Her Majesty's revenue, yeah. They work for her or him, yeah.
Sure, okay, if you see it that way. But maybe that's my answer for now, right? Again, I'm not here to convince people, but I think that's a reasonable answer. That law doesn't work for everybody.
Now, if in an Islamic family, a woman would only inherit half what the man does. Now.
Yeah, it's always true. Like, Islam doesn't change.
Oh yeah, I can actually say that the idea that if something came in, say what the law you're saying is true.
Yeah. That
100 years ago, which is 1922, there was a law in this country which forbade women to inherit from their fathers.
No, it gave them the same rights to inherit. It gave them the right to inherit property.
So 101 years ago, there was a law that forbade women, but. Even if you take that as an instance in UK, I mean, it's interesting if that's the case. I mean, I know for a fact that across different European societies that wasn't a blanket rule for all Christian societies, for instance. I'm thinking of Irish civilization in around 1400 or something. They were quite ahead on men and women's rights or something like that. So so the idea that, for example, that Islam was way ahead of all these other groups or something like that, I'm not so sure if I buy into that, just because of the, as I said before, about the centrality in maybe even in Roman courts as well. I think Roman women, I think, had a great power and a could be great inheritors. I'm not sure in Roman civilization.
I didn't get that impression from whatever I've heard of Roman law,
not sure,
but yeah, my point is, it's just
I'm not so sure it's some like simple like hooray, Islam has done this and it's done it before everyone. That I think that's kind of could be like could be good advertising, but maybe not necessarily the reality.
sure, like everybody can contemplate on it and they'll see what is the value of that information. You can decide by yourself, right? Okay, I think it's pretty amazing to be that far ahead of time. Yeah, I mean you can always check it, right? So go on, you say that.
When someone, if a woman inherited, if they were married, basically the husband would inherit it. Basically.
Sure. Anyway, so the point is,
If you go back a bit further, I don't think it's the same.
Yeah.
so like when I'm comparing like Japan to England, for example, on any small thing, and I go, oh, they make better toilets than us, you know, the self-cleaning toilets. I'm really impressed by that. I don't go, oh, maybe. And if they did it 1,000 years ahead of time, I'll be like really, really impressed. That's the sort of way I'm thinking about it.
If it was true.
Yeah, sure, of course. That's what I'm saying as well. Like I'm saying it's true, and I'm saying I'm inviting you to Google it and find out for yourself. That's all, and everybody can do that. I'm not here to say you must agree with me, you know, because as soon as like you've experienced this a minute ago, right? When people say you have to agree, then people get annoyed. I'm not there. It's like I'm literally here. I don't need to be here. I'm here to help, and the reason why I'm putting out this idea of Islam being a feminist religion, at least there's a, you know, less, you know, to kill some of the propaganda that's out there, but also if I genuinely think that it really helps people, men and women, okay, then I'm going to advertise it and clarify as best as I can, you know.
Yeah, I'd just like to say, like, I certainly, so I was asked earlier today by that gentleman who was very vocal. That he was telling me that there was propaganda against Islam in this country. I found it hard to conceptualize propaganda because I don't watch the media and stuff like that. But on the issue of what you just said, there is definitely propaganda, definitely, that of the idea that Muslim women are unhappy in Islam, and I find that ridiculous because obviously, being inside a religion of such history and such which builds civilization, obviously it's not going to make them unhappy. It's going to give them structure, it's going to give them purpose, it's going to give them a role for women. So that I think that you're right, there is propaganda there. And, yeah.
Thank you very much, very honest. I mean, just to give a bit more perspective, just because it's the last link, and I'm not going to say anything more than this. So the first university ever created was made by Muslim women in Morocco.
What year?
I can't remember. But I put a link. I put a link on the notes. I know it's important. It's a really long time ago. So, go on. You had the last comment. I'm going to probably try to avoid saying anything. Go on.
No, I'm just thinking. So you were saying about like 100 years ago, we changed so women could inherit. That's an improvement, yeah. Don't you think that's right?
Agreed.
So don't you think Islam should change? And
I'm saying
equal inheritance.
No, because we've got a different system based on biology, and I think there's a lot of problems when biology, the difference of men and women. So nowadays there's a lot of confusion. It's like, oh, men can have babies and all sorts of weird ideas.
Have anything to do with needing money?
So we believe in like a family-like organization. Everything's an organization, needs a leader. How do you choose a leader? Those kind of things based on biological differences is really important. I think there's a very clear, you know, like if you're a basketball player, right? Okay, you're a basketball player because you got longer legs, whatever. I'll be a rubbish basketball player. If you put anybody next to me, you realize why, right? Okay, that's a joke. But anyway, but the point is, biological differences are always used in society for people's benefits. And the reason I think, I mean, you might be, you know, nowadays people go, oh no, everybody's the same. But I think that the idea that everybody's the same is destroying Western society. That's why families don't work. That's why you got a population implosion where you don't have any children, because society doesn't work that way.
That somehow biology doesn't mean women can be leaders in a family, because I think there's loads of families where the woman is the leader.
Sure, and I'm saying those families are not working increasingly. That's why you have. No, I mean, I'm gonna literally. I can see that as a. That's the reason for the population implosion.
Islamic families, so maybe they sort of.
No, you know what? I'm about to agree with you. I'm about to agree with you actually, because. Yeah. Actually, I agree with you in the sense that there's like the final word. If there's like, are we going like this massive? You know, are we going in this direction or that different? The man kind of leads the way in that way, right? Because if somebody has to have the final word, we have the man to do that. But I would agree with you that in the, you know, the day-to-day running of the household, my wife is going to be like, I'm not throwing that dustbins, you're going out. Like, she'll boss me around. And you'll see that in most families. My mum is bossing my dad out around all the time. And normally she gets, I'm not going to go into it too much, it'd be embarrassing to them, but it's like, she's kind of like, she's really tough on everybody, and my dad has to just keep quiet most of the time, right? And we just like, all right, mum, that's how it works. So I kind of agree with that.
Yeah, that's what I think. It's nothing to do with biology.
But
Biology maybe accounts for strength and aggression, maybe, I don't know. But leadership, no, I don't.
sure, and also so patient. So I'd say women are more emotional, and we like that emotion. But because of that, that's why we just listen to my mum even when we disagree.
You know what? Someone is here is always meant to. Someone brings up something topical. So, and the topical thing about women and Islam is Iran at the moment. Could you say anything about what's going on there, or
So
do you think women are being treated unfairly in Iran, or?
sure, I'll just throw that in. So I'm a big fan of tourist videos. I've been watching a lot of tourist videos before this whole controversy, right? And you can check this out again on YouTube by yourself. One of the most popular and most happiest places I've known from this tourist videos by Westerners is in Iran, okay? And the idea that, from my own experience, okay, that it seems really suspect, the whole story, because we're told that this lady, I can't remember her name, she was basically beaten up and essentially killed because she showed a few hairs, right? Literally in Iran there is a fashion, and I'm not saying because I don't really support Iran as a country in itself, right? I mean, sorry, that's wrong. I love all countries, blah, 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 but I'm not like a particular supporter of Iran, right? And so there's a fashion in Iranian culture, and you can YouTube it yourself, right? That they literally show their hair, they colour the front hair so that it can be put in display. Their hijab, their head covering rules are really relaxed, okay? And people are really happy there. And like so every time I hear certain people there who've been interviewed and they're calling for regime change, I go, uh-oh, you've fallen for it, because they always go for regime change in Iraq, and what happens to Iraqis? Million women and children died for freedom that the West gave, but really, were they giving freedom, or were they just stealing oil? So for the love of Iran, that's all it is, right? I don't have to support, I don't see there's any proper Muslim country anyway, right? Okay, for the love of Iran, don't welcome the West to go and bomb you and kill your women and children. Try to sort it out between yourselves. I don't believe the BBC, because every time I hear the BBC, I hear the opposite of reality. When I was living in the Middle East, I'd listen to BBC World Service about the country I was living in, Jordan. I'd be like, that's literally the opposite of reality. So just be careful. Maybe go to YouTube more than BBC. That's all I've got to say about that. Yeah? Appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.